Well, all right, we'll figure out if we can't fix Ken's background. Stan, I guess, hates Friends School. I don't know what it is. Stan's not a
Nothing,
fan.
nothing
Uh,
against
I
Friends
don't know
School.
what that's all about. Hey, it is obviously not kind of thrown together as breaking news, and we'll cover it now. Pressbox
What
Live.
happened?
Yeah, the Baltimore Ravens have a head coach. Jesse Minter is indeed going to be their head coach. Of course, lots of ties to Baltimore. Spent 4 years on the staff under John Harbaugh, then spent 4 years with Jim Harbaugh between Michigan and Baltimore, and is now the next head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. Um, Ken, I know that you were not the biggest Jesse Minter guy. Your reaction to Jesse Minter being the next head coach of the Baltimore Ravens?
I'm good with it. It wasn't necessarily about Jesse Minter, the coach. It was about one wanting a head coach that was offensive minded. I wanted somebody that could be the offensive coordinator as well as the head coach. And two, selfishly, I just wanted to get away from the Harbaugh tree. Now, having said all that, Jesse Minter was born to be a head football coach in the NFL. His dad was a tremendous football coach at the University of Cincinnati, where he got his first job as an intern. And, you can't argue with the success that Jesse Minter's defenses have had at the college and the pro level over the last 2 or 3 years. So it's not about Jesse Minter. I think it's a fine choice. I think, a lot of his defensive philosophies and schemes are kind of old school, what Ravens fans are kind of used to, 11 people running like crazy against the ball and more of read and react than a spatial defense, if that makes sense to people listening and the three of you. So it's a really good choice, and as I said, all along, whoever they choose, I was going to be good with. But this is a really solid choice. This is a really good, solid football mind who's been successful wherever he's gone and has turned around a defense quickly wherever he's gone.
Stan, I know you're not, particularly schooled in the history of Jesse Minter, but your
No,
reaction to this being the routes.
I don't pretend to know an awful lot about Jesse Minter. Glenn, I got to give you credit. You were on him right from the start. Uh, for me, I left that Bisciotti press conference and I wrote something which I missed the mark on entirely. I thought they were really going to bring in somebody that had coaching experience, and I'm not saying that as a negative about Jesse Minter. He may hit the ground running and be a fantastic choice. I liked a couple of the choices that went off the board, but one came on the board that to me blew everybody away, and that was McDermott, Sean McDermott of the Buffalo Bills. When you get handed a gift like that, I'm going to take it. And they were handed a chance to hire a really solid football coach. And they opted to hire a very young football coach, which just brings up the question to me again: why now? Why not 2 years ago? Because the reasons they fired John Harbaugh today, those reasons existed 2 or 3 years ago for me.
I think it's an interesting set of circumstances, right? Because to Ken, to some point, that was Jesse Minter my first preference? He wasn't. At any point in this process, he was the guy that always made the most sense. And there was a reason why Jesse Minter was the betting favorite because Jesse Minter had connections to Baltimore. Like that would always give you a reason to think that he had a leg up. How they got here is particularly interesting, and what I had sort of learned over the last day or two didn't mesh with this decision until you read about from Jeff Zrebeck and Jordan Schultz that apparently they purposely sped up the timeline because the Raiders suddenly were aggressive in their pursuit
Of Jesse
of
Minter.
Jesse Minter today, and they just decided that it was worth bagging the rest of the coaching search to make sure they got Jesse Minter. So there's a process result thing here, right? The result might very well be fine, to Ken's point. It might very well be that Jesse Minter is their Mike McDonald, is the guy that, completely changes. Ken references Jesse Minter's history with defense. Jesse Minter, I'll give you an example. The Chargers, the year before Jesse Minter was there, had a bottom third of the league defense. In his first year as defensive coordinator, they had the top scoring defense in the NFL. Jesse Minter has proven that he can make changes quickly and that guys buy into his stuff. The players love him. Former Ravens, former Michigan guys, Chargers, all raving about Jesse Minter over the course of the last couple of weeks. The result might very well be fine. For me, the process, I don't think I would have allowed Jesse Minter to hold my search hostage. Like if that was the way that it worked out, that I still would have had faith that you would have gotten a hell of a football coach if Jesse Minter was threatening that he was going to go to the Raiders. But I get it. They love Jesse Minter. They know Jesse Minter quite well. And I think this speaks to, and for better or for worse, and I think there's room for opinion about this. I think that this wasn't a repudiation of John Harbaugh. This was them saying, we recognize it's time. We recognize this is the moment. It's hard to define time, but I think that's all it was. I think that in their heart of hearts, they want things to be the exact same moving forward as they were under John Harbaugh, just winning. Like that's the only difference they want. And I think they believe that Jesse Minter, given his history, will provide that for him. And they might very well be right about that.
Yeah, I have no say on who was your choice, Glenn. I'm just curious.
I was a Clint
We're
Kubiak. I was a Clint Kubiak guy, admittedly.
mhm,
And then I at one point decided that I would prefer Kevin Stefanski to Clint Kubiak.
right.
After doing a little research on his actual relationship with Shedeur Sanders, and I came around that Stefanski was the top guy. I mean, Minter was always, a practical choice. He was always. We just did another top five this week, Griffin, and I think all three of us, Griffin, myself, and Drew Forrester, all had Minter in our top five of candidates because he's a lot. He was gonna be a head coach. And so, sure, it makes total sense. Did the Ravens need a complete kick in the butt, a complete different thought process philosophy, or did they really need just sort of someone that could provide continuity, but hopefully a little bit more in the X's and O's department? And I think that ultimately that's what you're seeing is them saying we think the way we do things is the right way of doing things and that Jesse Minter knows how we do things and is going to continue the way that we do things on the whole, but maybe a little bit more X's and O's defensively can be the difference. It will be interesting to see if Cliff Kingsbury ends up being the offensive coordinator or who he ends up hiring as offensive coordinator because that part matters. But I think they want a continuation of what the Ravens have been. They just want it to be to the next level.
Did either of you guys, Ken or Glenn, did either of you pause when McDermott got fired and say, "Hey, this guy's one," or you looked like you were looking at me like I was crazy, Ken, or that
Because here's my only problem, Stan, and
yeah,
I get where you're coming from. Highly successful coach goes to the playoffs every year, but if one of the reasons that John Harbaugh was dismissed was, as the owner said, all those fourth quarter blowing of leads and
right.
not progressing in the defense in the playoffs, it's just more of the same to me. That
But
the Bills
I never remember us leaving a game that that McDermott lost in the playoffs and going, man, he really blew it. Now I
Well,
can't say I can't
I
say
can point out to the last one that they played.
well that
I mean, going away from the run, I get that your running back fumbled, but it's the same thing. Your running back's the reason led the league in rushing, and getting
right.
away from him because of one fumble is ludicrous to me. You know, the aggressiveness at the end of the first half for no reason at
Yeah,
all.
I agree with that. That was terrible.
So to me, I just And if you talk to Buffalo fans, like they weren't upset about that firing. Like they thought it was time because they haven't had the success that
They
they
didn't
thought
want to
that
go
they should have.
19. They didn't want McDermott to go 19 years.
Well, but they also didn't want, they wanted, again, if you look at from the Buffalo side, they had a generational quarterback that has been a top three quarterback in the league, and they have nothing to show for it
Mhm.
during his tenure. So they thought they didn't want to wait 18 years. They go, nine is enough for us, and we need to look in a different direction. I just thought it would be like shuffling deck chairs if you brought a guy like McDermott in. Again, good football mind, things like that. But I think some of his same problems and some of the reasons that he's no longer a head coach in the NFL right now are very similar to why John Harbaugh
Jonah.
is no
Okay.
longer a head
That's
football
fair.
coach.
That's fair.
Yeah, and I would say, Stan, I feel the same way. I think that Sean McDermott's a really good football coach, but I probably would have ended up saying the same thing, which is ultimately I feel like it's somewhat similar to your point, maybe not the
I
exact same because it's
Yeah,
not blown fourth quarter
I wrote
leads,
that in
but
my
yeah,
column the other day
yeah,
that it wasn't exactly the same,
yep.
but it was similar. There's no question about it.
I think the interesting part about this is the desire for continuity. And Ken, I think that one of the things we're kind of all dancing around is this continuation of the Harbaugh tree, right? And I know you being an anti-Harbaugh guy, and Stan, I don't want to say anti-Harbaugh, but Stan's been on that, boat for a long time as well. I, how do we talk about the continuation of the Harbaugh tree, measuring it against the fact that I know certainly Stan, I think you would have been very happy with Mike Macdonald as the head coach of this team, and he absolutely is a continuation of the Harbaugh tree.
Yeah, yeah.
I, I, I think
I would have been very happy with any of the three guys that were available over the last couple of years. That was McDonald, Vrabel, and Johnson. And I think all three of them would have loved to have worked with Lamar Jackson as their quarterback. And I think the club missed that. Listen, I do have a great deal of trust in Eric and Ozzy and Steve. And if they think this is the right guy, I'm not going to sit here and say he's the wrong guy. So I'm not against this move. It just struck me. It struck me. I thought they were going to really want a more experienced hand running things right now.
for me, I just here's the advantage that Jesse Minter has for me over John Harbaugh. He understands X's and O's, and I don't want you to take that so literally, but he's going to control one side of the ball and really impact games in the way that I think John Harbaugh did not. So, and allowed his coordinators to do more of the heavy lifting as far as strategy and gameplay and things like that. I think he's a fine choice. And I also said whoever they decide was, I was going to be fine because they've earned that right with this organization. Because in my mind, they haven't hired a bad head coach yet since the creation of the Ravens. So, when you're 3 for 3, you get the opportunity of the benefit of the doubt. I know it's different owners and things like that, but as an organization, and you get the benefit of the doubt for me. So I'm okay with the hire. Wasn't my first choice.
Yeah.
I agree with what Glenn said. He was always in my top five. He may have been five, and he moved up to three when Samansky and Sala were hired somewhere else. And I don't, and Glenn, I get what you're saying. I don't really mind if they didn't want to lose him to, revving things up. Uh, there's no guarantee that you were going to get Kingsbury. Get um, uh, his name escapes me now, from
Kubiak,
Seattle.
Kubiak is the
Kubiak.
Yeah.
There's a lot of jobs open still. There's no guarantee. And if they decided, look, we'd like to talk to him a little bit more, um, but we can't take the risk. I'm okay. I'm okay with the hire. I really, truly am. I just, I wanted to get. I thought it was time for a fresh start, and consistency isn't always good. it's always not the best. Sometimes you need to
Well,
go in a different direction.
but that's what I'm saying. I don't think this is a different direction. I think
I
this is them
don't,
telling you, yeah.
and that's my biggest concern with all
Okay.
this.
All right.
Again, I'm
But
saying because they've earned the right to be trusted with hiring head coaches. I'm not going to sit here as like, oh, this is a terrible hire and it's absolutely terrible. I've said
but
what I've said. I would have liked to go away from the Harbaugh tree. But my hope is that because I think this is more of an X and O's head coach and not just a
I
CEO
I
manager,
I don't want to
I'm
underestimate what you're saying, Ken. I think
no, I'm fine.
that's a very well put criticism of John Harbaugh, and my problem with him is I never felt he impacted games. I admired that his teams always showed up to play almost every game that he coached with the Baltimore Ravens. And I think that's probably 75% of the job is getting your team up to play. But then once the game started, I didn't see the same impact. And I think you're right. I think Minter has a chance to really impact games on one side of the ball. And I think that's one side more than John, you know.
There hasn't been a rookie head coach to win a Super Bowl since George Seifert in the 1980s.
But
So
that's
it's
It,
only
due.
for but
So we're
that's only
due.
1 year. But that's only 1 year.
it's true.
Yeah.
And to the
It's only
point, if he wins the Super Bowl in the second year, I think we'll all be cool with that.
well, I'll be very
I think
fine with
we'll
that.
all be fine with that. And Mike McDonald looks like he has a chance. I guess that's the only, when we talk about coaches with experience, and I talked about this a lot during, I thought this was actually more important during the Orioles search than it was during this search, oddly. But one of the things that we talk about with coaches with experience is you believe that your window is now. You're not, the comparison to John Harbaugh, they hired John Harbaugh at a time they had no reason to think that they were going to be competing for a Super Bowl. Ironically, they did, right? Like they made a run to the AFC Championship game and had a chance, but they had no business thinking that's where they were because they were drafting a quarterback. They were kind of resetting things. This isn't an organization that's resetting things that or not maybe reset is a better word. They're not rebuilding. They're not this isn't a hard reset. This is a soft reset. Is there any fear about an inexperienced head coach not being ready to take that next step for a team that's already good but needs to get over the hump?
Come back to me in next late December,
Yeah,
early January, and I'll tell you.
yeah.
Uh, I look again. I don't know all that much about Jesse Minter, other than he's been extremely successful at doing what he's done up to this point. We're going to find out. I don't ultimately have a problem with it, and I don't fear that we've got a young coach or a first time head coach. I just misread the tea leaves from that press conference and thought they really were of a mind to get Stefanski or Sala or Nagy. And I'm not saying one of them was the guy I had to have, but they surprised me, and it surprised me it was this quick.
And
And
what if
you've explained why, guys.
yeah.
I'm gonna bolt right
Yep,
now
Stan, we'll
because
talk to you tomorrow on
I'll talk to you
GCR.
tomorrow.
Appreciate you.
Kenny, it's good
And
seeing you.
See you,
Griffin, but
Stan.
always good to see you. Talk to you
uh,
tomorrow, Glenn. Bye.
KZ, concern about inexperienced head coach of the team that wants to win a Super Bowl right now?
No, because you look at the success that the last couple of first year head coaches have had around the league, and I think um, that is the way of the NFL now. That this could all change in a couple of weeks.
Well, they're not
Not
gonna. It's not
I
gonna be
mean,
a first year
that's not
head
going to
coach
be
winning a
first year,
Super
but
Bowl.
within their first. But I'm just saying, like there was a statistic I saw somewhere that said if you don't win a Super Bowl within your first 5 years, your odds of winning a Super Bowl are not very good. I don't need them to win a Super Bowl next year. I just need to show some progress and win one while over the next 3 to 5 years while Lamar Jackson is in his prime. So I don't have that concern. It hasn't happened because most of these, not many of these first time head coaches are going to teams like the Ravens. It's you don't get openings like this in the NFL very often, where you have a roster and a generational quarterback, and they're looking for a new head coach. So I take that with kind of a grain of salt and say, yeah, of course it's true, but when was the last time that the Jets have had a new coach 17 times, and the New York Giants just hired John Harbaugh, and are those teams going to win the Super Bowl next year? No. But the Ravens actually can. So how many of those head coaches actually went to teams that have a legitimate shot to reach a Super Bowl? And I think it would be very few and far between. And this is a completely different situation.
Yeah, I'm not. It's like I said, it's weird because I was way more concerned about this with the Orioles than I am the Ravens because the Orioles legitimately seem to be like regressing to an extent where they needed somebody to shake the fear of God into them. I don't know that that's what the Ravens need as much as we keep saying that they need just an X's and O's upgrade. They need someone with fresh ideas. Again, I am very interested. I know everybody thinks it's going to be Cliff Kingsbury, and that's what the
We don't
tea leaves
know.
are reading. I don't know that. I also don't know
Somebody
if it,
somebody came out and said Joe Brady today,
um it's
which
interesting. I guess, that would be in play. I mean, the Bills presumably are going to fire, they're not going to force whoever their next
presumably.
head coach is to keep Joe Brady. So Joe Brady would certainly be in play and somebody I'd be interested in. And who knows, maybe one of those pass game coordinators that they're high on, Nate Scheelhaus or Davis Webb, who we had thought they were going to bring in for interviews, could be somebody that could end up saying, hey, we'd still like to talk to you, and it would still be for a promotion. It just wouldn't be the head coach. The eternal problem that I deal with, and Ken, this is why I think you and I were both on the I'd rather it be an offensive guy than a defensive
Yep.
guy, is that fear that you go have something humming next year offensively, and maybe you don't win the Super Bowl, but to your point, you get close, you're clearly showing progress, you're right there on the doorstep, and that offensive coordinator gets plucked away, and then you take a step back the following year. And I get it. Somebody could say, well, that can happen the other side too. That happened with Mike McDonald. I obviously the Ravens took a serious step backwards post Mike McDonald, but to me that has way more to do with it it's almost impossible to me to fail in a defensive coordinator hire as spectacularly as the Ravens did. I just think it's easier to find a defensive coordinator that can keep the level of play high than it is to find an offensive coordinator that definitively clicks and works. Maybe some of that is just our history in Baltimore, and they've been fewer and further between, and there have been too many that didn't work out in the process. Maybe that's scared me and scarred me, but that is one of the things that, yeah, let's say it's Cliff Kingsbury at the offense coordinator and Lamar looks great, then I think Cliff Kingsbury is going to be right back to interviewing for all of the jobs a year from now. And that's just sort of the fear that I operate with when you hire a defensive head coach.
And I don't disagree with that at all because, you know, uh, that's the fear. But at the same time, I think if you get a Cliff Kingsbury and you get him to bring his people in behind him,
Yeah, so you're hoping there's somebody lined
you're
up. Yeah.
right. You're hoping there's a line there. But, it's hard for all those that were upset with Kingsbury maybe being the head coach. I mean, as an offensive coordinator and a quarterback whisperer, you cannot argue with this guy's history if he's the guy that's brought in. He has succeeded everywhere with quarterbacks. So
That part is true. And Joe Brady has as well, by the way.
Joe Brady has as well. I don't I'm
Well, I
again
guess
I'm
maybe not
not
Carolina. Yeah, that brief stint in
well
Carolina
yeah
wasn't
yeah
great.
yeah
But
that's
yes, when he had Joe Burrow and Josh Allen, things went
Yes,
really
yeah,
well.
yeah. I mean, when he's
Um,
had real quarterbacks, yeah, he's been
right.
successful. But I look, nobody saw Jaden Daniels being as successful in the
No,
NFL
of course
right
not.
away
Yep.
as he was, and
Well, I don't know.
you
Maybe I
know,
take that back. I think I absolutely did think that Jaden Daniels was going to be incredibly high
I
level very quickly, mostly because of his age. Like
yeah,
I did not think it
I
was going to
didn't
take.
I I didn't think he would be that in year one. That's just me. I thought he would be a really good NFL quarterback, and what he did in year one was totally
He was
unexpected
playing
for
like an
me.
MVP. Yeah.
Yeah, and to
Yeah,
the point, I don't think it's a detraction. I'm not saying that I don't think it's valuable what Cliff Kingsbury did because I just had that much confidence in Jaden Daniels. I still think he deserves credit for everything that happened with Jaden Daniels, and frankly, the fact that they without Jaden Daniels and without Terry McLaurin this year, we're still it wasn't the offense that was the problem in
it was not.
Washington,
It was
despite
not.
all of that.
And that's, saying that is sort of my kind of come around on the defensive side here of a defensive head coach is because, when we look at this, the last 2 years, it hasn't been the offense. It's been the defense, giving up leads late, not getting after the quarterback.
Hmm.
Um, so, in that sense, I'm sure a lot of people are truly very excited about this hire and think it's a great hire and wanted a defensive coordinator type as a head coach. And I understand that point of view. I just think you have this generational quarterback, and I want the best for him. And apparently, the word that came out, Lamar and Kyle Hamilton were very involved
Hmm.
in everything, and that's great to hear. And um, and what we just saw our good friend Mr. Owe go out to
Yep.
the Chargers, and Mr. Minter knew exactly what to do with him to make him
That's
everything that the Ravens thought that they could get him when they drafted him, and he took a week to figure that out.
Now,
So
to be fair, it helped that they had two other utter
it does.
stud edge
Personnel
rushers.
always helps. Personnel
Yes,
always helps. Personnel
that part.
always helps. But I have some faith in this guy. I mean, to turn around defense quickly because that's what he did. What's what he's done, and that's what he's always done. And again, I don't think we can underestimate the the coach that he was born to be a coach, coaching family, and he's been around football since he was born, and it's just in his blood. And I think that's also, when you one of the things that probably drew the Ravens initially to John Harbaugh when they interviewed him. So, I think there's some parallels here in all this.
All right. This was brought to you by 1-800-GAMBLER, helpmygamblingproblem.org. If you or a loved one has a gambling problem, give them a call or text, or you can visit helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services. And by the Costas Inn with two great locations, the OG 4100 North Point Boulevard in Dundalk and the new one in Timonium at the Grandstand. KZ, appreciate you. We'll be talking more as the staff gets filled out. Thank you all for
Sounds
hanging out with us.
sounds good.